Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to another session of our Nigerian Learning Collaborative. Before we start, I'd like to thank everyone for coming on time. Today's session will be just for about 2 hours, and we'll be kicking off right away. In order to be able to save time, I'd like to ask everyone to please feel free to go ahead and introduce themselves in the chat function there. You can put your name, your title, organization, and of course, a good wish for everyone. I know that times have been very trying, and I hope everyone is doing okay. Without wasting so much time, I'd like to welcome you all once again. Please, let's move to the next slide. Yes. So today's session, as I said, will be over 2 hours. Over the next 2 hours, we'll be looking at the key objective of the meeting will be to share our objectives and roadmap for the community of practice. We'll be getting to know each other much more, building our community and network connections, sharing experiences and practical learnings to apply to our work. That's actually one of the key things of this session today. We'll be learning from practical examples from the field, from some of our colleagues that are part of the collaborative. Next slide, please. So as I said, today's agenda, we'll be starting with a welcome and review of the roadmap. Before I go on, I'd just like to also let everyone know that, I know you've probably met everyone. We've probably had time to meet, but Meredith and the team from the University of San Diego, and also our colleagues from London School of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene. Would you like to introduce yourself, and also from MSpace, and then we could go on? So Meredith, over to you.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. This is Meredith from UCSD. Nice to see you again. And I'm here with my colleague, Rebecca.
Hi, this is Rebecca. Nice to see you all again. And I'm going to be driving the slides today, so any mistakes are my fault.
Ben.
Hi everyone, this is Ben. I'm very happy to be here with you and to see the community of practice moving along and growing. It's very exciting.
And then from the Nigerian team, Dr. Sada Hasbi, do you want to unmute and introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Dr. Sada Musa. I work for MSpace. It's very good to be here again. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Hasbiela Ahmed. I'm with the MidSpace team, and it's good to be here.
Yes, and I'm Mikhail Aliyu. I also work with MSpace. So once again, thanks. Oh, sorry, I think I missed that. I was looking through the list, and I just realized we have Anya from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Anya.
Hi everyone, my name is Anya. It's very nice to meet you all. I'm very excited to hear this meeting.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so most of you would have been part of the meeting where Ben and Anya from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, they had a session last week, and I'm sure most of you must have really enjoyed being part of that session. So going straight into it, as I said, the first thing on the agenda will be to review the roadmap. And then we'll be going to the shared learning sessions where we'll be having real life examples from some of our colleagues in the field. We'll then be doing a mapping case study where we'll talk a lot about the Align map. Most of you must have seen it in our previous session. We'll talk more on that as we go on. And then we'll be wrapping up. So as I said, we'll try to keep it within the 2 hours. And of course, we'll have time for questions and answer. So next slide, please. Yeah, so I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Hasbiela Ahmed. I'm sure most people will already know Hasbi because she's been sending a repeated email. So I'm sure she's either talked to you or you've seen in an email. The next voice after my voice will be hearing will be Hasbi Allah Ahmed, and she'll be taking us through the roadmap for how we will be working together. So Hasbi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mikhail. So to highlight the roadmap has 6 action points, and it's how we want to organize ourselves, what we will gain, what we will learn together, and what we will produce together, what other activities we would like to tackle, and what we will achieve together. So basically, in all the action points, next slide, please. In all the action points, we're just going to be highlighting communication mode for how we want to organize ourselves, what we'll learn, what we'll gain together. We have a lot of action points here, and one of which is professional network connection. And what we will learn together, one of the action points are best practices and evidence on norms. And also what we'll produce together, tools to support measurement, and we have other action points there. So I think I've initially shared the roadmap with the committee of practice. I'll also share it again. And then without further ado, I think we should go into the next phase. Meredith, I think we have a word cloud as the next action activity for the COP. So for the poll, what are you excited to get started working on? So Meredith will take on this.
Thanks, Hasbi. So sorry, I'm just having an issue with the poll function. So if you could all just type into your chat box, we would love to hear from you what you're all excited to get started working on together first as a group. And then we will save all your responses. So in our first community of practice meeting, we talked about some of the possible activities we could work on together. And then in the roadmap that we just shared and shared by email previously, we put together some of your responses, but we'd love to hear from you now in the chat box what you'd like to get started working on first together. We'll just give it a couple minutes.
It might be good for us to sort of remind you of some of the things we talked about. So we talked about sharing each other experiences with each other. We've talked about working in small groups to talk about each other's programs and sort of troubleshoot. We talked about developing resource documents, maybe developing a directory of Nigeria social norms projects and social norms. I think we talked about developing document or publications together about social norms. Trying to recall, those are some of the things that came up in our, talked about working together to improve measurement in our programs. Those are some of the things we discussed as well. So, and we'll be coming back to this question again in smaller groups later today and then in our next meeting as well.
Okay, I think while everyone reflects on that, we should get on to the next slide, our next section.
Hasbi, can you take it away? Or actually,
yeah, the next session I'll be introducing the shared learning presentations by by four very good colleagues of ours, and Modupe Tayo from Save the Children will be moderating this session. So I'll hand over to Modupe while she leads the session.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening, depending on where we are connecting from. So we'll go straight into the presentation. Today we will have 4 very interesting presentations from our colleagues. And the first presentation would be, so each of the presentations would be 5 minutes. And afterwards we'll take 10 minutes to ask questions. I'll go first with 1 or 2 questions, and then that lead the way, and every other person who has a question, please indicate by signifying your hand raised, and we'll ask the question. So for the first 2 presentations that we'll have in quick succession, 5 minutes each, we're going to have Dr. Farouk Jega, who will be from Pathfinder, who will be presenting on family planning and SRE services. And then we'll have Dr. Jagun and Sangita from the World Bank, who will also be speaking on the RM project. So after these first 2 presentations of 5 minutes each, we then have 10 minutes to ask questions, and then we'll go to the next round of presentation. So I'll hand over to Dr. Farouk for your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, good evening, everybody from all over the world. I'm extremely delighted to, have this opportunity to share some experience, with a recent project called 7 Mothers Give a Life that was implemented in Cross River State with generous funding from USAID and Mark for Mothers. So we targeted this particular intervention to address voluntary contraceptive knowledge, attitudes, and intentions, exclusive breastfeeding, gender equitable attitudes, decision making, around parenting, especially amongst first-time parents. And first-time parents are, defined as either women who are pregnant with their first child, or who have had a first child that is still in its infancy, which is less than 1 year of age. There's been several, literature reviews recently about the particular reproductive health needs of this particular group of people. Additionally, we reckon that in Cross River, as in the rest of Nigeria, almost 2/3 of our population, are amongst this age cohort. So Pathfinder International, under the Evidence to Action Project, decided to extend support in the 7 Mothers Project in Ikom and Obubra local governments, which are in the Central Senatorial District of Cross River State. And as I said, the objectives was to include voluntary knowledge, attitudes, intentions, and use of modern contraception, among other issues that include nutrition, child support, positive parenting, and gender-based violence. I would, basically talk a little bit more about the family planning, since that is the focus, of this conversation here. Next slide, please. So the main, behavior norms that we, wanted to address was, relate to provider bias. So we know that a lot of healthcare providers, have, their own biases around, offering family planning choices to young people as a whole, but also most particularly long-acting methods. Even where healthcare providers are willing to provide methods, they usually opt for the short-acting methods, the pills, the condoms, for young people, because there's this erroneous belief, that long-term use of long-acting contraceptives can result in subfertility or even infertility, amongst people. So we set out specifically to address, these two biases amongst healthcare workers, but while at the same time also, engendering positive behaviors, attitudes, and norms amongst young people, who we found out to constitute almost 70%, of hospital visitors in Ikom and Obubra between 2014 and 2017. Next slide, please. So we went around, in a very systematic way. First and foremost, we use the existing community structure. So we know that there are ward development committees that have already been set up. A lot of them are, not very active because of funding issues. But we mobilized them. We mobilized other community volunteers and other gatekeepers, like the traditional religious leaders, and then we organized the FTPs into different cohorts, basically around their age group. So there are those that are very young adolescents between the ages of 13 to 15, and then there is a cohort from 16 to 19, and then the young adults obviously are those from 20 to 25. We selected, peers amongst them who are a little bit more educated, a little bit more progressive, and forward-looking, and then we gave them basic training around sexual reproductive health and rights, and we also engaged, older women that were willing to play the roles of mentors. Lastly, we also engaged the male partners of these first-time mothers. Most of them were living together, either with their parents or alone, with their partners. And we organized them, into different cohorts and different groups according to the ages I described earlier, but also according, to already predetermined community structures in Ikom and Obubra. And then we went ahead over the next 12 to 16 months, to go through between 8 and 12 modules of sexual reproductive health information, we kind of created linkages also between the peers, the FTPs, and the local primary health centers. We also created other linkages with other projects, for instance, that address malaria, that address child nutrition, so that they can have value add as a one complete package. Next slide, please. So over we did a, pre-post intervention assessment, of the communities and the health systems. At baseline, we took the data and measured across several indicators. And then after 16 months at end line, what I want to share with you, is that across, all the domains, but particularly among the, family planning, knowledge, intention to use, and actual use of long-acting methods, we saw a definite increase at end line, compared with the assessments, we did at baseline. Additionally, we saw, some, interesting, gender responsive, if you like, so, some gender enhancing attitudes, based on the experiences, that these young people and their partners shared, with their cohorts. Within 16 months, we saw an increase of from 26% to 79% amongst non-pregnant FTPs, and between 43 to 78% amongst their male partners in terms of current voluntary use of modern contraceptive methods. This was, quite remarkable, given that, several other projects, had looked to address, some of the biases and norms, that perpetuate the the low contraceptive use that we see amongst adolescents, in this community. So this is in a nutshell what I wanted to share. I know that there's a lot of details, that I've left out, but I was conscious that I have just, 5 minutes. I'll be happy to take your questions afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Farouk, for that very interesting presentation. I can imagine that you have to squeeze a whole lot within the time frame, but then people would ask you questions and you can shed more light into that. So we'll move quickly to our next presentation by the ARIN project, and that will be taken by Dr. Jagun and Sangeeta. So you have the next 5 minutes to make your presentation, and your time starts now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Adenike Jagun, and I'll be presenting on behalf of the ARIN project funded by the World Bank. The next slide, please. So basically, ARIN is it's a project. Well, full meaning of ARIN is Accelerating Nutrition Results in Nigeria. Current location, we are in 12 high malnutrition burden states of Nigeria, providing a basic package of community services, integrated package that includes both nutrition and family planning for adolescent health services in one state. And in the other states, we're focusing just on nutrition services. In terms of program participants, this project is actually being implemented by the state ministries of health and primary healthcare development agencies. And of course, the beneficiaries and targets we're looking at are the pregnant and lactating women, adolescent girls, of course, and children under 5 years, including their influencers. It's funded by the World Bank, and the objective is to improve utilization of quality and cost-effective nutrition services for pregnant and lactating women, adolescent girls, and children under 5 in 12 states of Nigeria. Next slide, please. Okay, some of the social gender norms being addressed in our project. It's really focusing on women and adolescent girls. So we picked up quite a few, but I'll just mention a few here. One is that women should bear children immediately after marriage and frequently as a sign of fertility. Females, of course, especially adolescents married to older men, should not seek health care for themselves or their children without permission from the senior men in their household or their husbands. Another norm we have identified was women should not access healthcare from male providers. Older women, mother-in-laws, know better about feeding and caring practices for pregnant and lactating younger women and younger woman and her child. And of course, the fathers have a higher say in when a pregnant and lactating mother and a child should seek medical care. So these are some of the key norms that we picked up, during project preparation. Next slide, please. Now, in addressing some of these norms, we approach this in twofold. One, we looked at project preparation. Before we designed the project, we had to understand what the gender norms and behaviors that interact with the determinants, both proximal and distal determinants of the maternal and child health outcomes. Just to understand who are the people we need to engage, how do we need to engage them if we're going to achieve the results or the objectives of the project. Now, in terms of the theory of change, we factored these gender norms into the theory of change. We looked at how, addressing these norms, how the interventions will be designed to address these norms and what outcomes we'll be looking at that lets us know that we are doing an effective implementation that is helping to change some of these norms to meet our project objectives. Now, in terms of project design, we looked at performance-based contracting of service delivery, providing flexibility of service delivery approach that is nuanced to the cultural, social, and religious groups. So basically, the non-state actors, the NGOs who will be working in the states that we are supporting, we have the flexibility to design implementation strategies or methodologies that take into consideration the gender norms that are specific to the states that they are working in. So that gives them the flexibility. What we will be focusing on the results at the end of the day. So they have a lot of flexibility in how they implement the project. In terms of knowledge management and learning, of course, we want to understand, document what are the norms that are specific to each state, how is it changing, curating this knowledge, sharing from it, learning from it, and using it to tweak the project design as the project begins implementation. Next slide, please. The second process we also looked at was how can we, in project design, previous slide. In project design, how can we bring services closer to the women? Because we've mentioned, women not being able to access service delivery without permission. So how can we bring the services closer to the women through community-based services? So basically taking these services from door to door. And that eliminates the need for a woman to look for additional permission, because these services will be provided by female healthcare providers, social mobilizers, older women in the community. Will also serve as change agents, so they will be engaged to address some of these norms and support access to health services for themselves and the children of our target beneficiaries. And of course, influence appropriate MIYCN, maternal infant and young child nutrition at a household level. Of course, we're also planning to develop a mass media campaign to address some of these MIYCN related norms. And of course, the use of faith and community leaders to develop and transmit correct information about MIYCN practices relevant to the norms in their communities. Next slide, please. So the project is just taking off. We're still in the procurement process of getting the NSA, so it is yet to be initiated. But some of the things I have mentioned are the things that went into the project preparation and the design itself. So I would just encourage us to watch this space as we begin implementation. We'll be happy to share the learnings from the field and how we are able to positively change some of these norms that will lead to improved nutrition behaviors and practices in our project states. Thank you very much. Over.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Adenike Jagun, for this beautiful presentation. We will open the floor to everyone to ask questions. But before then, I will just push out two quick questions. So the questions we'll be asking will reflect on both the first presentation and the second presentation. So if you are not willing to ask your question verbally, please write in the chat, and our anchor persons will help pull out the questions and share with the presenters. So for the first presentation, Dr. Jega, I'd like to ask you if there is any social norms around uptake of LAC. You can take that question down and then you can respond afterwards. That's my first question to you. If there is any social norms you observe or you were able to document on the uptake of LAC amongst the adolescent mothers you work with. And then for the ARIN project, I know it's largely a nutrition project, but again, I'm wondering if you are considering the potential influence of fast food options on MIYCN, especially among adolescent mothers. There seems to be some noise interference. Please, can we all have our speakers on mute? Thank you. So my question to ARIN, so that was the question. I'm just wondering, I just want some clarification if you are thinking about the influence of fast food options among adolescents. Now we have adolescent mothers. Are you looking at that on MIYCN? Thank you. So I'll open the floor for people to ask questions if you want, or you can write your questions in the chat. So while our presenters are responding to the questions, others, please, If you want to ask a question, indicate by a show of hands, by raise your hand, and then I'll recognize you. And if you don't want to ask a question, please write on the chat. So Dr. Farouk, please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Your question is whether there are any social norms we observed around uptake of lags amongst adolescents. So apart from the provider bias, that I mentioned, I think it was, a norm, that young people, particularly those who are not living together, and so were considered not to be, having, sex regularly, that there was actually either a no or a reduced need for contraception. And particularly for lags, I think the predominant norm, is that they were reserved for older women who are married and who have had children. It was considered, that a young adolescent girl would be jeopardizing her future fertility, if she used an IUD or an implant, and so they were basically just, most of the time, the providers, either offered them advice or some of the short-acting methods, as I mentioned. Pills and condoms are the predominant short-acting methods, and we saw quite a huge increase in the uptake of LARCs, particularly implants, during the 16-month period following the intervention.
Right. Thank you very much. So that is Hawa Kawu, pardon me. Please take the mic and ask the question.
Hello, Jega. That's very nice to see what a tremendous improvement from 43% to 70% FT uptake. I was just interested to know what norms were you able to see shifted? What was the social norm that was significant that was shifted to create such a huge change? I would like to assume the behavioral change there was significant, not just because people wanted to do it for some other reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
There's any other questions? Sorry, please. Is there any other questions that I can take them and then answer them all together? Okay, so there's a question on the provider's bias. Were there interventions targeted to health workers to change their bias towards using short-time FP methods? Did you get that question?
Yes, I did.
Right, okay. So you want to take the two questions in one go?
Yes, sure, yeah. So I was mentioning, earlier that most of the, norms, particularly those around gender, relations, so there was a kind of non-acceptance, of the fact that these, young people were, having sexual relationships outside of marriage, and so there's this stigma that a young adolescent girl going to the health facility to ask for contraception, is seen as a taboo, one of the this is one of the key things that we addressed in our intervention, an openness to discussing sexual reproductive health issues, an openness to understand that young people have their own peculiar needs, especially during this period, and those under this category of first-time parents, so they're either pregnant for their first child, or they have indeed even actually have had, a first birth. So there was a lot of, gender interventions, you know, to particularly address the purchasing power and the agency, if you like, you know, of these young women to be able to you know, demand and have for you know, modern contraception. You know, concerning provider bias, you know, we have had a very, very successful you know, project that in East Africa that particularly addressed you know, provider bias, you know, using a human-centered design. And so this has been developed into 5 or 6, I think, different modules, you know, that look at addressing provider bias, you know, using human-centered design. So yes, there was a particular intervention. I think it is module 3 and 4 of the FTP package, you know, that we developed that was used to address provider bias.
Right, thank you. There's another hand. This is probably going to be the last one.
Okay, hello everyone. Hello. Okay, my name is Omalara. I just wanted to find out if the project, having worked on several family planning projects, I realized that implants seem to gain more acceptance as against the IUDs. So are there any specific norms that prevent people from taking up the IUDs as against implants?
Well, I think, you know, there may be, as I mentioned, you know, provider biases, you know, against that. But we did record, you know, norms around using IUDs, particularly for non-porous, you know, women who are not in a regular relationship. You know, those are seen as particularly reserved for women who are married, who are cohabiting with their spouses, and who have had at least one child. And aside from that, you know, I imagine that the provider bias, you know, most definitely contributed a lot, you know, to the uptake. So to the reduced uptake of IUDs. As you imagine, you know, these IUDs require much more training. They require more resources. They also require more time, you know, to provide than implants. So I believe that there is a multitude of factors, you know, conspiring against the use of IUDs compared to implants.
All right, thank you very much. And thank you for our colleagues who have asked questions. Let's also ask questions from the second presenter. And that is Dr. Jagun from the World Bank. I did ask the first question. I don't know if you still remember that. And if anyone also wants to have a question from Dr. Jagun, you have the floor. If you have questions for Dr. Farouk, please, you will need to reach out to him privately. We will not be able to take questions from Dr. Farouk any longer. So Dr. Jagun, please take the floor and take your question.
All right, thank you for your question, ma'am. Your question was asking about potential influence of fast food options amongst adolescent mothers. Yes, I mean, this has been considered because as part of the first step towards designing the mass media strategy and campaign, was you know, we did a synthesis of all the formative research out there, and so some of these issues have come up. And so one of the things that's going to happen is that for the mass media strategy, it will address specific groups, especially adolescents, and this will take, of course, into account, you know, those behaviors that are specific to that age group, what are the things they like, what influences them, you know, convenience and all of that. And of course, advocate for alternative healthy solutions. So it's one of the things, I mean, we really focusing on the age group we're actually very particular about is actually adolescents, to see how we can change that narrative and, you know, break that intergenerational cycle of malnutrition. So yes, that's part of one of the things that we are considering as we design this mass media strategy going forward.
Right. Thank you. Is there any other question for the nutrition project, please? I know it's still in the process. It's not been implemented.
Yes.
So
Yes, Modipe, can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you.
Yes, so this is Dr. Sada. My question is to Dr. Jagun. Thank you very much for that presentation. You mentioned about safe spaces for the adolescents, and I'm wondering, you mentioned that it is basically to, to take care of access problem due to distance. I just want to know more about it, and if you think there is any additional behavior shaping kind of benefit of the safe space. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sada, for your question. So basically, one thing we were looking at was, apart from the fact that we have inadequate service delivery points for women and adolescents to access health services, the community-based strategy is really to get the non-state actors, which we refer to, the term we use for the NGOs that be working in that space, to engage people at community level, health workers at community level, maybe community health workers, to be able to take services to the households of these women. Now, in terms of the adolescent girls, we actually have an integrated package where we are combining family planning and nutrition. The NSA is at the liberty to design a methodology to reach adolescents. If they prefer not to be reached at home, they could have a center, a community center, or the compound of a trusted community leader where these young girls can come together, they talk to give them counseling about nutrition and family planning as an integrated package, and gives them the freedom to access these services. So the safe space here is more of where is convenient for the beneficiary. Do they prefer to be serviced at home because the opportunity is there to take this service delivery to the household, or would they prefer to be serviced along with their peers? So the NSA has the flexibility to come up with a proposal of how they want to reach the women, how they want to reach adolescent girls. And of course, that has to be taken into context the social and cultural norms in that community. So there's really a lot of power and flexibility between the NSAs and the State Ministry of Health to agree on a methodology to reach these women. So the safe spaces here just connotes, what kind of platform do these beneficiaries prefer to receive their services. I think that's pretty much what this sentence was trying to address. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Once again, we appreciate the contribution and the presentation from Dr. Farouk and Dr. Jagun. Right. So we will draw the curtain on the first two presentations and question and answer at this point, because we have to move to the next two presentations. So we have a presentation from SODIN by Alhaji or Hadia Maimuna Mohammed for another 5 minutes, and after which we're going to have sort of an introductory presentation of a project by it's a Naira Tara project. You get to know what the project is about from a partner who's also intended to have partners in Nigeria, and they would spend more time to ask clarifications and ask questions to know more and see how we can connect with that project. So I'll give the mic to Sodin to take the presentation for the next 5 minutes. Thank you. Sodin, are you there? Please unmute yourself if you are on mute.
Perhaps we should go to the next presentation while we figure out if Maimuna is here and if they're having any technical difficulties.
I'm trying to check the list of participants to see if she's there. Okay, I'm not sure I can find that. Okay, so in the interest of time, let's move to the next presentation, please. Hasbi, can we move to the next presentation? Thank you. The Narakara project.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So can you hear me clearly?
We can.
Great, excellent. So like it was already introduced, this project is at a very introductory stage, and talking to Haspiala and Dr. Sada, we discussed the opportunity of getting feedback from participants. So as I said, we're just trying to build build an intervention that will address social norms. And before we do so, I would like to tell you what our initial ideas are. This project would be nested within an existing project called the Nigeria National Social Safety Nets Project, which is commonly known as NAST to everyone. Can we go to the next slide? So I'm at this moment introducing NASP largely because, and I'll explain in a minute how our project will be nested within this. NASP currently is being rolled out in 6 states across Nigeria, as you'll see both in the north and the south. The NASP project targets low-income households, and it carries the project's plan is to target productive members in the household who will be provided with a lump sum cash transfer with the idea to encourage them to start a business. They will be provided with business skill training as well as life skills training and regular mentoring and coaching, plus regular small cash transfer grants, which are already being rolled out as part of the NASP project. This is being rolled out by the government of Nigeria and multiple organizations within this. And the World Bank's objective within here is to identify the most effective strategy to deliver this livelihoods intervention. So giving you this context, what I wanted to mention is the sticky social norm that we're trying to address is the fact that we've noticed from our baseline survey that households typically tend to select men as productive members. And the reason we think this is driven by social norms is largely because we see a huge difference in this selection between the North and the South. We particularly find that households are more likely, and this is not an absolute selection, this is who we just ask them who they're likely to select. The selection will be made at a later stage. So we have this short opportunity, sorry, next slide, please. We have this short opportunity during a survey. We can carry out a potential 2 to 3 hour intervention where we can work with households to question or challenge the social norm that women cannot be productive members. So our aim would be to increase selection of female productive members and increase supportive behavior in the households, and to think of productive activity as being a household activity and not an individual activity. So we want to do this while making sure that overall the household still selects the most successful member, because the overall aim of the project is graduation from poverty to increase, measured as increased household consumption and profits from this productive activity. So next slide, please. So the initial idea overall is to see if we can actually change household behavior in terms of who they select and who they rally behind, and how everyone can sort of be a more equal member in this productive activity. And our very initial ideas are these sort of 6 activities that we would do in the 2 to 3 hours. And initially, the main thing I would really like feedback on at this point, of course on the other parts too, but is the video idea that we have is to make households more comfortable with with challenging this prevailing gender norm that men would potentially be better productive members, encourage them about the idea of a female productive member and what supporting women entrepreneurs by a household looks like. So the activity beyond this video would include skill mapping as well as time use mapping in the household. Specifically, when we say time use mapping, one of the common activities in a lot of gender norm questioning workshops is asking men to map out the time use of women so that they understand what women actually do all day, which is often a lot of things that go unnoticed. So that would be part of our intervention. We also would ask households to rate skills, entrepreneurial skills, and we would be gender neutral in trying to select those skills. So specifically, instead of choosing things like that would have an underlying gender bias, we would try and choose things like communication skills, people orientation, and other entrepreneurial skills that would help households think more positively about how females can be income generators in the household. We would then like to have a discussion within the household about how everybody could be more collaborative and encourage whoever is selected as the final productive member to be supported by another household member and attend the life skills training with them. So next slide, please. So overall in the videos, which would be the first 15 minutes of the intervention, sorry, the one behind that, please. Yes, thank you. So in the videos, we are thinking about these themes to be covered in either one video that would be shown to everyone, or the idea is to think of 6 videos by state that cover these following concepts. Largely, the video shows how women overcome social norms to start a business, how they receive support from household members, the challenges and fears they typically overcame, and how did the household decide to be supportive to them, positive examples of collaborative decision-making, communication, and support in a household. So I'd really like your feedback on what might be missing from this or what might not be helpful. And I'd like to hear about people's experiences on having done household interventions that encourage sort of households to work together. If you have any examples from there, that would be really helpful to us at this stage. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Naira, for that beautiful presentation. As just like we mentioned, it's an introductory presentation. We will allow time for people to ask questions, but I just want to say that I think the video idea is great, but again, it's good to also reflect on the contextual duration across the geography where this project is planned to be implemented. Also, again, videos have been used in several interventions, and they have really made great impact on people if the characters in the video are familiar people. You know what I mean? So, for instance, in northern Nigeria, if, for instance, the character in the video who is speaking to the issues and demonstrating the positive norm, it's somebody that is known in the community that's likely to have a greater impact on the person, is likely to motivate the desired behavioral change. So yeah, these are some of the things to think about. So I leave the space for people to also make comments or ask questions as the case may be. Thank you very much, but that's really a big project you have in there. Okay, the floor is open. If you have a question, raise your hand or take the mic. Anyone? Okay, so I have 2 persons raising their hands, so please take turns to ask your question. Thank you.
Okay, can I start?
Yes, please.
Okay, Okay, once again, my name is Awolu Kau. It's quite interesting to see the spread of this subject of discussion for the video. My question is it supposed to address cross-cutting social norms across different thematic areas, or could they be independent? I say it may likely not be one video, maybe 2 or 3 that could have a harmony or convergence of specific context, especially if we look at it from the way it is. You have questions that are from, for instance, 1, 2, 3 that may look alike, and 4, 5 that may do. So my question in the specific context is, are we looking at highlighting social norms that cut across different thematic areas, or they are going to be specific? Over. Thank you.
I'm sorry, there was quite a bit of echo. Can someone just summarize that for me if you could hear it clearly?
Okay, so I think the question is largely asking the spectrum of the social norms you are intending to explore. Is it across, all the sectors, So because you were basically talking about productive members of the family, what kind of sector are you looking at specifically, right? If women engage in different kinds of productive work, right? So what sectors are you looking at specifically?
Right,
So
I think.
where do you intend to explore the social norms?
Right, so I think this is specifically with economic empowerment. So I think the idea is in terms of the term productive member is specifically being used here as someone who is going to start a business. So who the grant will be given to. So if we go to the first page, I'm sorry, I should have, first page of the presentation. It's 2 slides behind. Yeah, so when I say activities targeted at a productive member of the household here, this would mean that the productive member is someone who receives the one-time lump sum transfer of cash of 100,000 Naira, followed by life skills training as well as business training. So this person will be encouraged and supported, hopefully after this intervention by the household, to set up a business. So that is the specific definition of productive member here. And I think in terms of the general gender norm that we hope to challenge, it would be the selection of who that person is. So as I said, there is a statewide difference in this. We do see that households, typically almost 40% in the South, are willing to select females. And in the North, this goes down to almost 20%. So we would like for an overall increase of at least equal selection of men and women as productive members. And this not driven by gender norms.
Right, thank you. So again, in terms of awareness of being productive, especially so when you're looking at the social norms around that, in some areas, it's assumed that dependence on the husband, for instance, is a norm, right? Mm-hmm. So it might also be good to explore what actually are the influencers of this norm, so that appropriate targeting can then be built into the project, into the intervention, right? And that would also vary across the geographical space where this project is being implemented in Nigeria, because in fact norms that influence that behavior in the North will be different from the norms that influence in, for instance, in Oyo State, because I can see Oyo State and in Cross River in the state. So yeah, so maybe just looking at those differentials, those variations, and influences of those norms as they may differ from one state to the other. That may also be useful. So there's a second hand raise. I don't have the name of this person, so we'll just give you 1 minute to quickly ask a question, and we'll move to the next thing. Unfortunately, we will not have the Sojin presentation because she's not able to join for some reason. So we would wrap up this session with this question. So the next person should please ask the question.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So my question is, yes, the videos, who were the videos meant for? And how were local women able to access these videos?
So I think from a practical perspective, like I said, one of our options is that we have a 3-hour slot where we would enter the household for a small survey. So we could do the intervention with the household. So the video is one portion of the previous slide. Like I mentioned, we would have a full session of 2 to 3 hours with the household, with everyone available in the household, hopefully, as many people as possible, to have this discussion before they select and finalize who the productive member would be. And videos would be part of this, where it would be, and we're not 100% sure about where in this process to locate the video. Would it be helpful in the beginning? Would it be helpful in the end? And this is where I was hoping for people with programmatic experience to provide feedback on, when we go into a household, how do we do this process? I mean, the video at the start is just an idea. We're open to changing the order. We want to do what we think will work best, but it will largely be at the household level by a potentially trained surveyor who will do these activities in the household over 3 hours.
Okay, thank you very much. We will have to draw the curtain for the sake of time on this discussion at the moment. If you have further questions or further clarifications, please share your contact details on the chat box, and people can reach out to you directly. Thank you very much. I know that the last presentation we would not be able to take because our presenter is unavoidably absent. But we have another activity that we're supposed to do. Ashley, are we moving to the next activity, which is about a reflection on the presentation? So effectively, we had 3 very interesting presentations. We would like to reflect on them and would like you to share your experience from our work, all right? And afterwards, we're going to do a word cloud, which we would do in a group. So there'll be a breakout session for us to do a word cloud. So I will leave this. Are you taking us into the group now, or you want people to just shout out? Yeah.
Thank you, Modupe. So earlier we're going to have a poll, and we fixed the poll. So we'll do the poll after we come back from our breakout sessions before we wrap up. But for now, this activity is similar because we're going to use the chat box. So if everyone could put in a 1 or 2 word reaction to the presentations. So Rahina said entertaining, Betsy said thought-provoking. Then while you're in the breakout sessions, we'll put all the reactions into a word cloud so that we can see them afterwards. So under your Zoom functions on the bottom bar, you should see a bubble that says chat, and you should be able to put in your 1 word reactions there. So I see a few coming in. So we'll try to get as many as we can. Thank you, Modupe. And then in the meantime, while everyone is putting your 1 or 2 word reactions into the chat box, we wanted to introduce our breakout sessions. Thank you, everyone. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for typing. This will make for a much more interesting word cloud the more that we have. Rebecca, if you could just move to the next slide so we could introduce the breakout rooms. Okay. So we know that there were some questions earlier that we didn't get to. We wanted to give everyone an opportunity to just wrap up any reflections that you had on the presentations. And then we also wanted to give everyone a chance to share your own work with each other. So we had 3 presentations today to really kick off the discussion, but we really want to hear from everyone in the breakout groups about what your experiences are, you know, shifting social norms, identifying social norms in your programs, in your monitoring and evaluation, in your research. So following, you know, a similar model of the speakers, what were you seeking to do? What did you find out? What results did you have? So we are going to have 4 groups, and we have a moderator and a note taker for each of the groups. And we're going to be in the groups for about 30 minutes, and then we'll bring you back. And in the meantime, if you have any other one-word reflections, please feel free to put them in the chat. I've seen a lot, so I think we have a great number for the word cloud. And now we will move you into your breakout sessions. So you'll be automatically placed into a room with a moderator, and we'll be really excited to hear from you about your experiences. All right, thanks everyone.